I saw your son mix something into your drink." In 7 words, a lifetime of trust shattered. The celebration I'd earned turned into a countdown, and the man I raised became the stranger I had to outthink. Betrayal doesn't roar, it whispers, then rearranges everything you believe about love, duty, and the cost of looking away. From that moment, the night stopped being a toast and became a test. Protect the name that built a life, or let it be buried under someone else's need. What followed wasn't rage, it was resolve, the kind that turns fear into steps, evidence into armor, and pain into a purpose that outlasts the wound. If you've ever learned the hard way that family can be both home and hazard, this story will meet you where it hurts, and show you how to move anyway. Before we dive into today's story, I recommend you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Late hurricane season hangs over the French Quarter like a damp curtain, and the hotel bar breathes amber light. Brass flashes by the stage, a ceiling fan turns with patient wrists, and the air carries that faint river smell New Orleanians recognize without looking up. I take the stool-facing mirror and door. Habits from warehouses and docks don't retire when you do. After 40 years of thermometers, seals, and chain of custody signatures, I sold HarborSpan cold storage for $41 million and stepped out of the cold. My cardiologist's voice rides the cymbals. Easy on alcohol after 65, Sam? So, I order lemon soda in a rocks glass and let the ice keep tempo. I want to feel present, not blurred at the edges. Tonight is a report filed with myself. Still here, still steady, still worth a second act. Ryan arrives in a suit sharp enough to part the humidity. Chelsea at his shoulder, with the pace of someone who lives near a lens. Their perfume brings its own weather, floral and expensive, not quite mixing with wood polish and brass. They hug like cameras could flash. "Congratulations, Dad," Ryan says, bright and practiced. "You're a legend." Chelsea's smile is measured to the millimeter. "You deserve to enjoy life." Pride and weariness tug the same rope inside me. I nod. I thank them. I listen more than I talk. The band slides from a standard into "What a Wonderful World," and I decide not to crowd the moment with caveats. Let the music shoulder some weight. The glass cools my hand. The room steadies. For a few bars, the river and I keep time. Their praise keeps its billboard shine. I answer in short lanes, a detail about the closing, a joke about missing freezer alarms at 3 a.m., one careful sentence about sleep feeling new on me. When we pause, Ryan clears his throat like a presenter switching slides. He mentions a family trust, tax efficiency, growth strategies for the next generation, phrases straight from a deck. Chelsea nods along, riffing about storytelling the Reed legacy, aligning the brand, placements I've never asked to be placed in. I watch them the way inspectors watch thermometers. Truth has a level line. My reflection in the mirror watches me watching them. The face is thinner than it used to be. Skin sun-scuffed from doc years, eyes doing math they didn't sign up for. I want a simple win tonight. A son who looks at me like a father, not a facility. Evelyn's voice taps the rim of the moment. "Sam, our boy's quick. Too quick can slip." I don't scold the memory for being right. I set it beside the trumpet and let it hum under everything else. The bartender polishes glassware with the reverence of church ushers. Tourists laugh in the lobby. A brass doorknob collects fingerprints like a guest book. The ceiling fan ticks, another metronome keeping me from rushing. Lemon soda breathes faint citrus over ice. Condensation runs a clean line to the coaster. New Orleans carries history and humidity. You can feel when a room leans forward. Between songs, the silence is honest. The bandleader lifts his horn, then lets it hover, as if taste testing the air before choosing the note that deserves it. I made a life in the cold, in the bright light of inventory bays, but warmth lives here tonight, and I let it. Hope is a small door. I leave it open. Ryan and Chelsea trade quick glances that read like stage direction. They ask about retirement and travel, and I answer with honest limits. I say, sleep first. I say, maybe fishing. I don't say fear. I don't say the thing that trembles when legacy turns into pitch. Their smiles hold, the way banners do when wind tries them. The band pivots to blues and slows the room by half a step. A waiter relights a candle. The flame answers with a steady shoulder. I set my glass on the coaster and listen to the quiet between cymbal brushes. Ice, mirrors, river, little omens stacking themselves without fuss. I watch the door, the way longshoremen watch weather. The night is still mine, I tell myself. The next song will prove it or take it. Either way, I keep my seat and breathe with the city. A toast turns into a test the moment a father realizes the room loves his fortune more than his heartbeat. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. The band glides into a slower blues, and the room thins between cymbal brushes. The fan turns patient wrists, glassware halos the shelves, and the river's smell noses in from Decatur. Ryan rises with a gesture I've seen in boardrooms and weddings, 2 fingers at the phone, a nod meant to apologize without ceding control. He moves out of earshot, speaking to someone who exists more urgently than I do. Chelsea stays angled toward the stage, thumb in metronome rhythm, collecting 13 seconds of brass. I reach for my rocks glass. Condensation bands my fingertips. The ice taps the rim, one small knock, then another, like a dockworker's habit reminding me to check twice before I lift. Years of manifests and seals make hesitation a muscle. I pause, study the colorless fizz pretending to be bourbon, and set the glass back on its coaster. That is when Duke Alvarez moves. He does not rush so much as arrive, navy posture, eyes that catalog a table in a glance. His palm lands lightly on my forearm, a pressure with boundaries, nothing a stranger would notice. "Mr. Reed," he says without letting his voice carry, "I saw your son mix something into your cup." Only I jolt. The room keeps its grace. Duke slides a fresh napkin onto the bar, shifts so his body shadows my glass from the rest of the room, and gives me the kind of look you hear more than see. Follow my lead, no noise. I nod with the same economy. He tips his chin toward the back bar mirror where the camera's red dot holds steady over our section, then glances at the clock above the bottles, silently marking the time window. He speaks once more, almost like a credential pinned to a lapel. Navy nurse. Not a boast, context for moving fast. He lifts a clean rocks glass, sets it where my hand will naturally fall, and inches the old one deeper into his reach without touching it again. The swap does not happen yet, only the choreography for it does. I don't drink. I let my expression tilt toward indecision, as if the soda has lost its charm. Chelsea's smile floats over, efficient and empty, then returns to its blue glow. I flatten the napkin with 2 fingers and stand, working a polite half grin to excuse an aging bladder or a weak signal. "Need to take a quick call," I say, for the table, for the room, for the camera if it records sound. The hallway has a different gravity. Carpet hushes the shoe and gives back the hum of a lamp. Behind the door, a horn bends a note and lets it hang there, undecided and beautiful. In the corridor's quiet, I can hear my own blood make a small wind. Celebration shrinks into a scene. The bar is no longer a room, but a location. My stool, a mark on a blueprint. I look down. Duke's card has found my hand. I don't remember taking it. Name, shift lead, a number that looks like it gets answered. He has written the time range across the back in tidy block letters. Training runs through me like a drill. Identify, preserve, document, escalate in order, and never mistake speed for care. Evidence already exists. Glass, napkin, lens, witness, whether I want it to or not. I pull my phone, breathe once to flatten the tremor, and call Monica Pierce. We don't speak details in the open. I give her the headline and a place to meet. Soon. Her answer is the same as when my freezer alarms failed in 08. Measured, dry, actionable. I end the call and pocket the phone like stowing a tool. For a moment, I stand with my palm on the cool paneling, letting wood discharge the shock. Anger tries the latch, but doesn't make it through. Purpose does. I square my shoulders, fold Duke's card once, and then unfold it. Ritual, not doubt, and file it for later. The plan is not confrontation. The plan is clinical. Confirm, preserve, proceed. The blues note resolves. I take one more breath, the kind I used to take on the dock before we broke a seal, and turn back toward the door, toward the night that has changed shape without changing color. A single whisper from behind the bar flips celebration into suspicion, and the ice in the glass suddenly sounds like a clock. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. I came back from the corridor leveled, the way I used to return to a loading dock after a sudden alarm. Duke caught my eye, and I gave him a single nod. He returned one of equal size, then resumed polishing glassware with the calm of a man who knows panic only breaks things that still work. Without breaking the room's rhythm, he pulled on food service gloves and slid my original rocks glass onto a clean stainless tray. The used bar napkin followed, lifted by its dry corner so nothing smeared. He jotted the bar ticket number, the time to the minute, and the stool position on a small form. The shift lead stepped in, initials neat and square. It looked like bar work. It read like evidence. From the shelf below, Duke produced the bar's food safety sampling kit, the kind meant for contamination checks. He poured the remaining liquid into sterile vials, capped them, and fixed tamper tape across each lid. The napkin went into its own bag. Labels took date, time, location, a brief description, customer glass, section B, and his initials. The tray rolled toward a lockbox fridge behind the service station to wait for pickup. Monica texted as if the phone had read my pulse. The private lab would take an after-hours intake. She sent the courier's name, an ETA, and a reminder to capture a photo of the handoff slip. I photographed Duke's contact card and the courier details, not because I would forget, but because memory deserves a partner when truth matters. Duke tipped his chin toward the black dome in the back bar mirror. Our rail fell inside its umbrella. He wrote the observed window on the back of his card, from Ryan's return to my hands almost lift, and passed it to me with the casualness of a receipt. The shift lead quietly noted the camera eyed in retention policy, so Monica could ask, not beg, when it was time. He set a fresh lemon soda at my place, a glass that had never been anywhere but his hand. I sat, adjusted the coaster until the condensation ring aligned, and let the new rim find the light. Chelsea looked over. I gave a small shrug meant to read as indigestion, not alarm, then let my attention drift to the band where anyone could see it. Ryan returned, voice bright as if nothing in the world had a sharp edge. He asked if I was okay. I said a blood sugar dip, then asked what he thought of the Saints' pass rush, whether the band would play that old Professor Longhair tune, and if the weather might finally shake loose the sticky heat. I did not touch the old glass. The room resumed its routine, which is what rooms do when they haven't learned a new story yet. When I asked to close out, I had the tab posted to my room, because a hotel folio does not forget when people do. Duke confirmed the courier would sign a transfer slip and that the shift lead would witness the handoff. No confrontations, only receipts. I have built a life on the difference. In the ride home, I replayed the sequence like an audit. Who moved? What touched? What time? Downtown sodium lights scrolled by in patient bands. I matched my breath to their spacing and chose procedure over panic because panic does not care about outcomes. Near midnight, Monica's message landed with the sound of a file drawer. The lab had the vials. A priority screen was underway. She asked me to start compiling soft evidence on Ryan and Chelsea, credit behavior that spikes and drops, the LLCs they have opened and abandoned, recent purchases that look aspirational, sponsored content that looks like a prayer in designer clothes. Motive is a picture frame. She wanted the edges. I opened the cedar box where Evelyn kept her notes and found the line she had left me about legacy and keeping. It steadied me like ballast under a shallow draft boat. The house felt less empty when a sentence remembered what I couldn't forget. By morning, the lab reported a cardio-depressant consistent with a beta-blocker class in what remained, and at a concentration that did not belong in anyone's casual drink. Coupled with age and stress, the note suggested, such a dose could pull the floor from under a body. The language was clean, the implication unadorned. I did not shout, and I did not call. A thin, cold line drew itself between a glass on a bar and an obituary in a drawer. I recognized that line from crisis winters at the docks. The moment facts harden and choices stop arguing, I set my face to the work. No public scenes, no righteous noise. From here on, performance and patience. I would play the tired father while Monica widened the aperture, and the city would keep time while we did the clinical, necessary thing. Evidence replaces adrenaline, a glass bagged, a timestamp noted, a lab report that reads like a forecast you don't survive. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. The morning after the lab report, I chose a stance I know how to hold: performance and patience. I would let life's surface look undisturbed and buy time for Monica to widen the aperture. No public flares, only controlled breaths and careful notes. Ryan called daily, his concern arriving like a scheduled delivery. The first minute stayed on health, sleep, meals, a tight chest. By the second, he drifted to structure, asking about estate planners as if we were comparing weather apps. On the third, like clockwork, came what mattered to him. Had I talked to Monica about a family trust? I kept my voice lower, let pauses gather like rain at the curb, and offered answers that sounded frail without yielding control. I seeded the bait without carving it into promises. I said Monica was sketching a trust to keep things simple. I never said numbers. I never said beneficiaries. I said we would look at papers when they were ready. It was a soft frame designed to create expectancy without handing over leverage. The fewer nouns, the stronger the net. Chelsea joined one call on speaker and shifted from warm to strategic in a breath. She praised my legacy, then offered help with narrative and placements, as if story could be set like a table. Brand speak is bright fabric. It covers a stain without washing it. They needed a new chapter with my name underwriting it. While I played soft, Monica's team worked hard. Public filings, liens, UCC searches, and property records tied to their names. Ad spend patterns, sponsored content engagement, and late payment chatter in vendor forums. A sweep of LLCS opened and dissolved before their first tax season. Midweek, a consolidated report arrived and turned the bar into a ledger. Revolving credit near ceilings, 2 premium cards panting, a short-term high-interest loan from a predatory fintech stacked fees like sandbags. A luxury SUV lease was 2 payments late. Studio ad buys sat past due on net 30 invoices. A condo HOA had warned over arrears. 2 LLCS were dissolved after brief activity. With penalties and a second lien obligation added, exposure stood north of $2 million. The spreadsheet clarified the bar night. Greed wore survival's face. Their identity project needed cash flow. Without it, foreclosure and repossession would sweep through the world they film. Communications discipline became my metronome. I kept replies in text or email, time-stamped, polite, non-committal. I never promised and never refused. I wrote that we would review with counsel. Meanwhile, Monica confirmed the courier receipts, the shift lead's witness signature, and the lockbox fridge log. She calendared a preservation letter for the hotel's camera system, so no one could conveniently forget how long the footage lasts. Behavioral tells arrived like gulls behind a trawler. Ryan's voice lightened whenever I said Monica is working on it, and he began suggesting dates to swing by for signatures. Expectation, not inquiry. Chelsea texted a neat outline for a brand deck, complete with imaginary headlines and a media plan dressed like gratitude. It read like a press kit for money not yet moved. I kept the room small. I did not tell the pastor, or the men who fished the chifuncte with me, or the neighbor who watches my mail. New Orleans runs on stories, but I built my life on seals and manifests, facts stored cold until they are ready for daylight. Each night I reopened the cedar box and read Evelyn's steadying line. Legacy isn't what kids spend, it's what they learn to keep. Anger softened into procedure. Procedure felt like railings on a narrow stair. Monica's media monitor caught the other shoe. Chelsea had booked a true crime podcast to float a story about a controlling, slipping father and guardianship conversations. We saved the booking post, the producer's email, and the teaser language. Monica prepared a preservation request and a draft defamation notice. They wanted a narrative. We wanted records. By week's end, the picture held. Motive established, smear attempt logged, chain of custody clean. I drafted a neutral message to Ryan that said exactly what I meant and nothing more. When Monica finishes the preliminaries, we will set a time to review. I pressed send, filed the thread, and listened to the house settle around me like a ship making peace with the dock later that night. The calm performance begins, frailty on the phone, bait in the water, and a smear brewing in the shadows. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. 1 week later, late morning light draped Monica's 40th floor conference room in a purposeful gray. The table was a runway of mahogany that refused clutter, the skyline pressed against glass like a held breath. Monica kept the climate cool, the shades half drawn, the chairs exactly spaced. This was an operating theater, not a family parlor, and every surface said, "Instruments only." Ryan and Chelsea arrived with the glitter of people expecting a ribbon cutting. His suit had the creases of something recently purchased. Her dress knew where cameras like to look. They carried triumph the way some carry perfume, leaving a wake of confidence as they crossed the room. Monica met them with a nod that offered nothing but time. I sat at the far end, hands folded, heartbeat steady, the river of the city moving quietly below us. Monica did not mention any trust. She placed 3 envelopes in a precise stack, edges aligned as if accuracy were a form of mercy. The first slid across the lacquered surface until it met Ryan's fingertips. Inside waited the priority toxicology screen from the bar glass residue, clinical language, a beta-blocker class cardiodepressant identified at an abnormal concentration for any benign context. The chain of custody from bar to lockbox to courier to lab sat side by side with timestamps, initials, and the handoff slip. The implication required no adjectives. Add age and stress, subtract luck, and a body can fail on a timetable. Ryan's gaze snagged on key phrases and would not move. Chelsea read faster, searching for a sentence to pry against. I kept still and let the paper speak in its native weather, dry, cold, exact. Monica's voice matched it. She did not narrate. She positioned facts in the open air and waited for gravity to finish the thought. The second envelope landed with the softness of an axe. A consolidated snapshot of their financial position. Revolving credit near ceiling. A short-term high-interest loan that multiplied fees like wet rope. A luxury SUV lease, 2 payments late. Ad buys aging past due on net 30 lines. A condo HOA warning clipped to the back. 2 LLCs dissolved after brief activity. Stacked with penalties and a second lien obligation, the exposure cleared $2 million. It did not accuse, it reframed motive without raising its voice. Chelsea broke first, pivoting to the tactics she trusts most. Delegitimize the decision-maker. She spoke about instability, forgetfulness, susceptibility to influence, the vocabulary of a guardianship whisper campaign dressed for audio. Monica did not engage the spin. She opened a thin sleeve of printouts, brand posts celebrating a live large life, vendor dunning emails with polite teeth, ad spend confirmations from platforms that do not lie because they invoice. These are from the past 60 days, she said, then let silence do the arithmetic. The third envelope did not contain video, only notes that made the idea of video unavoidable. The dome camera covering our rail at the hotel bar, the device ID, the retention policy already preserved, and a timestamp window handwritten by a bartender with Navy nurse posture from the moment Ryan returned to my almost sip. The record was a map to corroboration and a reminder that rooms also have memories. I added a card to the arrangement. Duke Alvarez, his shift, his number. I said he intervened and initiated proper handling. The gesture anchored a human witness to the sterile trail and made the night less abstract. The table now held chemistry, arithmetic, optics, and a name. I spoke once, and only once. I am not a bank. I am a person. And that night you treated me like a card past its limit. The room's chemistry changed as if someone opened a door to colder air. Ryan looked at Chelsea with something frayed and unpracticed. Coordination cracked. Dread found a chair. Monica allowed the silence to lengthen until it had edges. Then she stacked the envelopes again, squared the corners, and set a pen beside them. Not as invitation, but as scale. Ryan's voice came out thinner than when he entered. "Where are the trust papers?" Monica's answer was the whole strategy in 2 words. "Read everything." There were no trust papers because this was not a signing. Expectation met vacuum and widened it. The skyline beyond the glass felt farther away. The envelopes sat like instruments that had already done their work. Monica closed the session the way surgeons close an incision, cleanly, without flourish. They were to read, initial receipt, and acknowledge understanding. "Read everything," she repeated, and the door opened to the hallway where choices wait. The evidence array did not move. The next chapter would not be about facts. It would be about what to do with them. Monica keeps the stack centered, pen aligned beside it, as if straight edges could steady a crooked morning. The air conditioning hums with the patience of a metronome. I sit composed at my end of the table. Across from me, Ryan and Chelsea look smaller than they did a week ago, triumph drained to calculation. She opens by defining scope. This session exists to confirm receipt and understanding of materials and to present paths forward. There will be no trust signing today. The phrase lands like a sterile instrument on a tray. Clean, undeniable, cold. Then she discloses what matters most for the long arc. The disposition of my estate has already been executed. The Evelyn Reed Arts and Coast Fund is funded and operating. An irrevocable structure with no beneficiary access for them. Its mission is practical and local. Public school jazz scholarships, instruments for church bands, and coastal restoration grants that stitch marsh back to shoreline. The foundation sits beyond reach. It is a seawall. Monica lays out the options with clinical clarity. The first path is a criminal referral. The full package, toxicology, chain of custody, camera preservation, and the consolidated financials, goes to the district attorney. Potential charges include attempted poisoning, fraud and forgery, and conspiracy. The process is public, and the sentencing risk significant. The second path is a civil resolution, strict and final. Today they would execute an irrevocable agreement that permanently disclaims any inheritance or expectancy from me or the fund. Title to their condo would transfer to the fund, with defects cured through a fund-holding entity. They would accept a 10-year no-contact term, agree to non-disparagement, and return borrowed property within 7 days. All evidence would be sealed in escrow at Monica's firm, with an auto-release trigger on breach. They must also acknowledge the fund is permanently beyond their control in all jurisdictions. She neutralizes the plan smear with facts. A physician's capacity evaluation, dated 2 weeks prior, states I am competent in making independent decisions with no cognitive impairment. The paper has more gravity than rumor. It sits like a keel under the file. Then Monica unveils the ambush they filed 48 hours earlier. Ryan petitioned for temporary guardianship, supported by a forged doctor's letter. She cites the filing number and timestamp, then highlights the signature discrepancies, the curve that never curves that way, the clinic header misaligned by a millimeter. We are prepared to move for dismissal with sanctions, she says, and to refer the forgery for potential contempt or charging if we choose the criminal path. Micro behaviors populate the silence. Ryan stiffens the way men do when the floor shifts. Chelsea's posture flips from offensive PR to damage containment. Eye contact between them fractures into shards that never meet. I keep my hands folded and let paper weight the air. I speak once, low and steady. I won't seek spectacle. I will seek boundaries. The fund honors Evelyn. It will not bankroll anyone's debts. The only generosity left is the chance to walk away free. Monica moves to mechanics. If they choose the civil path, each page will be initialed. Signatures will be notarized in the room. A courier will file the deed transfer immediately. Litigation holds will go out at once to the hotel and to the podcast producer to preserve records. The evidence binder will be sealed in escrow with the auto-release clause on breach. Time joins the meeting as a fourth participant. They have this session to decide. If they leave without signatures, Monica will file the criminal referral and the sanctions motion by close of business. The clock's second hand grows audible in the hum. There is no debate about character, no argument about intent, only documents. Monica slides the agreement forward until the pen rests across the signature line, like a bridge you cannot cross without becoming someone else on the other side. We sit inside the held breath before motion. Ryan's hand hovers. Chelsea leans toward him and whispers into that small, private air couples keep for emergency coordination. We cannot hear the words. Monica's gaze shifts to the wall clock, ready to mark the hour if it passes without ink. Consequences stand in the doorway, patient and perfectly awake now. The room waits, instruments glinting, city muted, decision imminent. Two doors open, public ruin or private boundaries, and the pen hovering over the line decides the future. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. That afternoon, Monica filed our opposition with the capacity evaluation attached, and the court moved faster than expected. The judge summarily denied Ryan's emergency guardianship petition, citing insufficient grounds and irregular supporting paperwork, and warned that further misuse of the process could invite sanctions. Monica logged the docket number and time in our file. I read the single-word ruling and felt it bolt a door from my side. Denied. By evening, the podcast teaser flickered online, a few sentences baiting a story that did not belong to them. Within hours, Monica served preservation and defamation notices on the producer and the hosting platform, attaching the capacity letter and a chronology that left little room for malice to hide. The platform temporarily hid the teaser pending review. Public noise dipped. The paper trail grew thicker and more orderly, which is how order wins. The next morning, Duke came to Monica's office in a pressed shirt that made the Navy in him visible again. He read his statement once, signed once, and dated it with block letters that did not tremble. The language was crisp and spare. His observation at the bar, the gloves, the kit, the initialing, the camera angle, the time window. He ended it with 5 quiet words that fit him. I saw what I saw. Ryan emailed asking to meet alone, to clear the air in a room without lawyers. Procedure answered for me. Monica replied that all communications would remain in writing, summarized the 2 paths, and reiterated the 1 meeting timeline if they wanted the civil resolution. She kept the nouns hard and the verbs short. Clarity is sometimes the kindest possible tone. At home, I began paring down what no longer served. I boxed duplicate tools, dusted Evelyn's piano until the keys shone like old teeth made new, and replaced a harsh lamp with a warmer bulb that forgave the hour. The house exhaled. In the dusk, I walked the levee and watched towboats shoulder the river into obedience. I was not saving a past. I was protecting a boundary. Sunday, I stood in the back pew and sang off key with the rest of us. Afterward, the priest put a hand on my shoulder, asked for nothing, and offered 1 sentence I needed. Forgiveness is grace. Boundaries are wisdom. I carried it home in my pocket like a found coin, weighty enough to center a day. By midweek, Monica emailed that they had accepted the civil terms and would appear to sign. She scheduled the notary, cued the deed transfer packet, and highlighted the clauses that mattered. 10-year, no contact, non-disparagement, return of borrowed property within 7 days, auto-release of escrowed evidence being a breach. Each safeguard had a mechanism. Each mechanism had a clock. Good agreements anticipate weather. The signing had the quiet of hospitals after visiting hours. Ryan signed first, his hand shaking in the long loop of his last name. Chelsea signed after, the nib hesitating at the opening curve as if the letter might refuse to begin. Monica initialed each page, stamped the notary, and photographed the signatures for the file. A courier left to record the deed. A paralegal sent litigation holds to the hotel and the podcast. Monica explained the effects without embroidery. Upon recording, title to their condo would vest in the fund. Arrears would be cured by the holding vehicle. They would pack one suitcase each and vacate under the move-out checklist. They acknowledged a permanent disclaimer of any present or future estate rights. I added nothing. The paper spoke with a voice that did not need mine. They left without looking back. The room kept a clean, almost sterile grief, the kind that follows necessary surgery. I felt no triumph, only the dull ache closure leaves when it has done its job correctly. Sometimes the win is a quiet room that stays quiet after the door closes. As the building settled, Duke asked to speak privately. He told me a church scholarship in Evelyn's name had once paid his sister's culinary tuition. He had never known Evelyn originated the gift until he saw the fund's letterhead. The grace that once left our house had come back as a steadying hand at a bar rail. New Orleans is small that way. It circles close if you live long enough. With signatures dry and property moved, Monica turned the file from defense to construction. We would finalize governance for the fund, lock spendthrift protections, and draft the first-year slate of scholarships and coastal grants. I drove home to a house that felt lighter, the river pulling its steady rope past the city, and a calendar that finally faced forward. The morning after the signatures recorded, Monica's subject line arrived in my inbox with the ideal number of syllables: file closed. By noon, I was in her office again, this time with a governance binder instead of an evidence stack. The skyline looked less like a witness and more like a horizon. We turned pages the way carpenters measure, twice, then cut once, budget tabs, bylaw drafts, checklists that replaced adrenaline with order. We finalized the fund's frame first. Irrevocable stayed irrevocable. The mission language held steady. Public school jazz scholarships, instruments for church bands, small grants that sow shoreline to marsh grass, one plug at a time. A supermajority clause locked the mission against drift. The investment policy chose durability over fireworks. Low volatility funds, cash cushions, no bets that make headlines. I wanted the fund to breathe long after my name was just paperwork. Controls followed. Monica threaded strict spendthrift protections through every seam. Grants could not be pledged, sold, or promised to anyone else. No individual had beneficiary rights. Disbursements would require 2 signatures, program and finance. And emergency use authority would sunset in days, not months, with a written rationale filed before any money moved. It felt like a dock door that seals true. You hear the click and trust the cold will hold. We split the giving into 2 channels. A portion moved to a donor-advised fund so we could respond to unforeseen needs without rewriting bylaws. The rest sat in the operating account on a calendar I could hum. Spring scholarships, summer instruments, fall coastal micro grants. Accounting rhythms work like music. You keep better time when you know the downbeat. Year 1 took shape in concrete pieces. Scholarships would prioritize public school students with a teacher recommendation, an audition tape, and need-based weighting. A panel of 3, band director, church musician, and outside adjudicator, would score on a grid. For the church bands, we listed what a parish actually needs: trumpets, trombones, clarinets, a couple of reliable drum kits, repair vouchers for instruments with more history than parts. Micro grants would go to Saturday plantings and shoreline cleanups, small checks for people who will show you the mud on their boots as their report. Communications stayed quiet by design. A single page on a simple website, 1 press note to community papers, no interview tour. The purpose is service, not a victory lap. If the work is any good, the music will speak. I drafted a separate letter for Ryan, delivered through Monica. It wasn't a bridge, but it wasn't a wall without a door. If he completed debt counseling, held steady employment and therapy, and kept a clean record for 12 months, I would consider a job training or certification scholarship in his name only. Tuition paid directly to the school, not a dollar in his hand. No access to fund assets, no promises beyond eligibility. Boundaries are a kind of mercy when they are clear. Partners met me halfway. A public school band director walked me through the closet where cases go to be forgotten. We measured finger spans and shoulder heights for an instrument fitting day. A church music lead sketched storage shelves on a legal pad and circled where the dehumidifier should sit. We scheduled a Saturday. I volunteered to label cases and set mouthpieces, not to speak at a podium. At home, the air changed. I opened windows, traded a hard bulb for a warm one, and filled boxes for donation. I moved Evelyn's photo near the piano, where the metronome keeps honest time. I poured water into a glass and did not think of that other night. The act reclaimed its ordinary weight. A small parcel arrived from Duke, polished bar spoon, engraved with one word, stay. His note said only, for the night you did. I set the spoon by Evelyn's photo. It belonged there like a counting stick. Administrative finish lines lined up. The hotel and the podcast confirmed litigation holds. Escrow instructions were signed. Quarterly boarded dates hit the shared calendar. The bookkeeper received the first disbursement map, with due dates and signatures flagged in yellow. Monica closed her binder with the sound of a drawer that now opens for better reasons. Evening laid brass across the porch from some rehearsal I couldn't see. The scent of rain moved upriver, soft and electric. I let the city's measure become mine again. No rush, steady bars. The inaugural scholarship list and the instrument day were on the calendar. Coastal grantees uploaded short proposals with photographs of hands in mud. I would stand at the back and let the light find them. Outcomes would be small, visible, and enough. We had chosen our ending. Now we would live our way into it. Poison becomes purpose, horns in young hands, grass in the marsh, and a calendar that hums instead of burns. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. Several weeks passed before I noticed the city's heat had slipped a notch and the light over the river turned forgiving. The story's tempo eased from legal urgency to lived routine. Monica confirmed the condo deed had recorded in the fund's name. Arrears were cured through the holding vehicle. Their move-out checklist was signed without protest. Litigation holds stayed on calendar. The escrow binder sealed with its auto-release instructions. The docket went still. Silence, for once, meant stability. Per the agreement, Ryan and Chelsea left with one suitcase each. Word reached Monica that he had picked up part-time hours at a small warehouse upriver, the kind of job that prints a paycheck without adjectives. Chelsea slipped her channels offline, then resurfaced with neutral pictures of coffee, sidewalks, and sunsets. No commentary about family, no sly innuendo. They observed no contact and non-disparagement. And Monica logged monthly compliance checks. The podcast teaser never returned. The producer acknowledged our notices and froze the episode indefinitely. Rumor, which normally loves this town, failed to catch. New Orleans moved on to other stories, playoff speculation, a new brass band downtown, the levee path repaving between mile markers. I walked there most evenings, measuring my pace against the river's long pull and letting the breath settle into a slower gear. The fun began to show its shape in public. On a Saturday, the instrument-fitting day filled a school gym with folding chairs, scuffed floor, and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. There was no podium. I stood at the back with a clipboard and a roll of masking tape. Teenagers tried on horns. A band director leaned into the light, testing valves, tagging repairs with a pencil stub. Scholarship envelopes moved from a card table to careful hands. A shy boy lifted a clean trumpet that gleamed because someone had cared for it, not because it was new. A church music lead signed for 2 clarinets and a drum kit. A volunteer loaded cases into a dented van. It looked like possibility, tuned and practical again. A week later, I visited a marsh edge where a small crew planted plugs along a shallow canal. Boots disappeared to the ankle. A borrowed flatboat pushed a crate through tea-colored water. The air smelled like brine and gasoline, a scent I've always trusted because it means people are working. They logged photos for our reports, joked about sunburn, and kept their eyes on the tide chart taped to a cooler lid. Small grants felt correct in my hands. Money that becomes labor without stopping to admire itself. Monica kept my conditional training scholarship letter for Ryan on file. We did not deliver it. Mercy can be a boundary with instructions. Do these 12 months of work, then knock. The door exists. It does not wave. At the hotel bar, Duke returned to ritual. He polished glass until crystals sang, set coasters straight, and watched older patrons' drinks for a half beat longer than he used to. We nodded when I passed through one afternoon, nothing more. The engraved spoon he had sent me glinted on my piano at home. It had the calm authority of a metronome. Home learned a new pace. I kept the windows open until the evening wind came upriver. The warmer lamp wrapped the room without exaggeration. Evelyn's photo stood near the piano. The metronome clicked a rate I could keep. I poured water and thought only of thirst. Routine, I've decided, is a kind of shelter you build from small, repeatable acts. There was no triumph to pose with. What arrived instead was a durable peace, sober relief, a boundary held, a future pointed outward. The city sounded like itself again. Distant brass, a bus sighing at the curb, a gull stitching the sky. In the gym, on another Saturday, a new player missed notes and laughed, then tried again. Out at the marsh, wind combed through fresh shoots and made a soft sound like paper turning. I left by a side door and let outcomes speak for themselves. The work was ordinary and visible, exactly the scale I could carry. The message I'd been walking toward waited on the far side of these small proofs, and the cadence for the last measure had already begun to tap its time against my palm. At dusk, the porch takes the day's heat and turns it gentle. A faint brass line drifts from a rehearsal 2 blocks over, more breath than melody. I sit with a glass of water that does not scare me anymore. The ice clicks once. I breathe and let the house set its pace. I live at the city's tempo. Legacy is not a vault handed down, but a rhythm continued. Money is a tool. Meaning is the work it funds. If someone can keep time because you set a tempo that outlasts you, you built something that matters. The fund exists for that reason. Instruments in hands, scholarships in envelopes, micro grants in marsh banks until the shoreline holds. Forgiveness and boundaries do not contradict each other. Forgiveness keeps the door of the heart unlocked. Boundaries decide who may cross and how. I chose not to burn my son in public or rehearse the worst version of him for strangers. I chose rails and procedures and a future that would not make a headline out of my wife's name. Mercy looked like a door with rules, not a pile of cash thrown into a fire. There was another road. The file was ready for prosecutors, cameras preserved. The lab spoke in plain language courts understand. I stepped away not because it was unjust, but because it would feed a furnace I will not stoke. I would rather build a calendar than check court dates. I wanted quiet proofs, not loud victories. Fatherhood did not end when I refused to bankroll harm. It changed shape. A conditional letter sits in Monica's file, a narrow door with instructions and time. If he earns a training seat and a clean year, tuition will go directly to the school. No cash, no limelight, no speeches. A structured chance for a man to become useful to himself. I am not alone. Competence is a kind of kindness, and I owe thanks to those who practiced it. Monica kept nouns clean and clocks honest. She wrote mechanisms instead of monologues and let paper carry the weight. Duke put a steady hand on my wrist at the second I needed it. When my son left the table, the bartender rushed over and said he had seen something mixed into my cup. That interruption kept a chemical from becoming a coroner's line and returned me to the business of being alive. We turned that near poison into horns in a school gym, grass in a marsh, and a budget that moves like a hymnal. That is the alchemy I believe in now. The old motifs have settled. Ice is just water that keeps my drink honest. The mirror behind a bar no longer watches for deceit. It reflects a man who kept tempo when it mattered. The river keeps its steady pull past levee and pilings. When I'm unsure, I time my breath to it and remember who decides my cadence. Outcomes do not need a spotlight. A shy kid hit a clean note and laughed at the surprise in his own sound. A church drum lifted a hymn and carried the back row into melody. A phone pinged with a photo of muddy boots lined up by a truck after a planting day. On my piano, the engraved spoon Duke sent, "Stay," rests beside Evelyn's picture and the metronome. Small proofs outlast big promises. My duty is simple: keep the calendar. Spring for scholarships, summer for instruments, fall for coastal grants, winter for reports and repairs. I will show up with tape, valve oil, and a dolly, not a speech. If the work hums, people will hear it. I keep what Evelyn wrote about keeping. I keep the house lighter and the windows open. I keep the habit of pouring water without flinching. I let go of the fantasy that love and money share a language. I let go of watching every glass like a suspect. I let go of the noise that pretends to be urgency and isn't. Now, the evening breeze leans across the porch like a familiar hand. Brass winds itself down. The metronome ticks beside the spoon that says stay. I lift my water and do. We did not find peace in revenge. We found it by turning poison into music and letting the music lead us home. In the end, the story is not about money changing hands, but about rhythm finding its way back into a room. A life can spend decades learning the tempo of responsibility, the steady count of promises kept, the unglamorous beats of maintenance, the rests that protect what truly matters. When danger arrives disguised as celebration, what redeems the moment isn't a grand gesture, but a small interruption, a quiet fidelity to attention. The simple choice to pause, to verify, to keep the chain of truth intact becomes the hinge on which everything turns. Legacy, then, is less an inheritance than a time signature you leave behind. The question is not who sits closest to the safe, but who can keep the measure after the music changes. Boundaries make that possible. Forgiveness opens the heart. Boundaries keep love from being spent like loose cash. In a culture that mistakes noise for significance, there is a particular courage in choosing procedures over spectacle, calendars over headlines, repair over rage. The work of guarding what is good often looks like paperwork and patience, ordinary tools, exact and sufficient. There is a discipline to gratitude as well. Competence is a form of kindness, and the world is held together more often by people who know how to do small things well than by those who perform big feelings loudly. A steady hand that intervenes at the right second, a mind that writes mechanisms instead of monologues. These turn harm aside and give hope a workplace. They rarely ask for applause, results speak for them, and then they move on to the next necessary task. Transformation follows, not because fate softens, but because someone chooses a different use for the day. A liquid meant for betrayal becomes instruments tuned for a school concert. Fear becomes tuition for a skill. A threatened name becomes a promise to a coastline that needs stitching back to itself. The exchange rate of good is modest but stubborn. Small grants, repaired valves, marsh grass that grips the mud and holds. What begins as self-protection matures into service, then settles into stewardship, a way of standing watch so others can learn, play, and build. To refuse the path of vengeance is not weakness. It is the decision to spend a finite life on outcomes that add up. Courts exist, and sometimes they must be used. But there is dignity in redirecting energy toward the kind of order that keeps children practicing, choirs singing, river edges rooted. The best victories are the ones that do not require enemies to stay alive. They continue as budgets, as checklists, as a drum-keeping time for ordinary afternoons, steady enough to let other people find their entrance and their pitch. Peace, when it finally arrives, is rarely cinematic. It sounds like a metronome in another room, like water poured without flinching, like laughter after a clean note. It looks like a gym where folding chairs scrape a scuffed floor, a shoreline where boots line up by a truck at day's end, a ledger that balances without fanfare. Quiet outcomes accumulate, and with them comes a sturdier kind of joy, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself to believe it is real. What remains is a simple duty. Keep showing up, keep the calendar, fund the small proofs, trust that steady bars outlast crescendos. Let forgiveness be a door with rules. Let generosity be a tool with a handle. Leave behind not a monument, but a method. Repeatable steps others can learn without a name attached. If the work hums, people will hear it and hum along in time. Because legacy is rehearsal, not crescendo, a daily steadiness practiced without applause. The way hope survives, transfers of ownership, and season changes. If a final image is useful, let it be this: a glass of water set down without fear, a spoon engraved with a single word reminding a life to remain. Stay with the slow, decent work. Stay with the community that turns risk into rehearsal, and rehearsal into song. Stay with the river's patient pull toward usefulness. In a world eager for spectacle, choose continuity. Turn poison into music, again and again, until the music teaches others how to keep the beat when you are gone. These turning points remind us that setting boundaries and valuing ourselves is not just an act of courage, it's the foundation of living with dignity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one lesson from this story that you feel connected to, and how will you apply it in your own life? Let's grow together by sharing our thoughts. If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, feel free to leave a 0. Your feedback helps us improve. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and spark reflection. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life with strength, honesty, and authenticity.